Welcome to RevelEleven. It's a place where we gather in community for inspiration and connection and all kinds of different topics ranging from nature to fitness to mental health to whatever it might be. And today we're here to talk about transitions. And it's a big topic. It's a lot to cover, and I will not get to all of it. But what I hope is to give you some new insights and even some tips that you can consider as you're navigating through the transitions in your life. I'm going to talk a little bit about what led me to this topic and my background. I'm also going to talk a little bit about the term moving into transitions itself. So we purposely titled this morning's session Moving into Transitions because it's my belief that transition isn't just an event, an occurrence, a one-time occasion, right? We don't just switch jobs or leave a job. We take time to think about if we want to leave a job or even look for another job. We don't just move from one city to the next. We take time to plan. There's an event, there's a process. Sometimes transitions are things that we initiate, and other times there are things that happen to us. I consider one of the biggest transitions in my life was my father passing at a very young age of 56, and it created a significant shift in all of our family. That was a transition. I also consider transitions when my children left to go to college or when I entered menopause. Those are life events, but they are still transitions. And one of the reasons I really like talking about the topic of transition right now is at the end of the year, it's the one time when the beginning and ending of something are so visible, so side by side. And beginnings and endings always coincide, but sometimes it's hard for us to think about it that way. And it's not that I go into the new year with all these resolutions. I don't make New Year's resolutions, but I do take time at this time of year, whether it's in December or January, to say, hey, there's a shift happening. There's a natural shift. There's an ending of one year and a beginning of next. What do I want more of? What do I want less of? What's important to me? And what is my role in the shift that's happening around me? So before we get started, we're going to do some exercises. I'm going to tell you some stories. We're going to have a lot of fun, I hope. I want you to take just a minute to, first of all, think about not any future transitions, but past transitions. What are some of the things that have happened in the last year or two that you consider to be a transition? And write them down. We'll refer to this later. You can also put them in the chat. It could be, you began working from home. It could be that you switched jobs. It could be that you left a friendship. It could be a variety of things. But take a moment just to reflect on any of the transitions that you have made in the last year or two. These are ones we've already experienced. Kristen, losing a spouse. That's a transition. That's tough. Starting to use my voice. I like that. Leaving my husband. I can relate. Losing my father and many others in my circle. We've all been experiencing a lot of transition. I have goosebumps. I'm holding so much space and grace for all of you. Thank you for sharing so openly. Thank you. So as we think about those transitions, homeschooling my two youngest, wow. Cleaning and organizing my house, that is a shift. They're all shifts and they're all deeply personal to us. And what I want you to do for just a moment is think about those transitions and think, okay, I'm here. I'm here. I've gotten through some of that process. I may still be experiencing some of that process, that shift, and that's okay. But it's something we've done. We've experienced a change and we've gotten through it. Libby, I love that. Finding priorities in my journey with thyroid cancer. My son leaving for college, I can relate. Trying to keep fear into perspective. It's hard right now to do that. These are all great examples of transitions. Thank you for sharing. Okay, the next thing I want you to do, for the sake of exercises that we're going to do together today, is think as you move into 2022, what transitions are ahead? Are there things you already have in the works? Are you job hunting, house hunting, thinking about selling a house, helping your mother or father transition into a different home? What are some of the transitions you have coming up for you? Make note of them, share them in the chat. Maybe you don't know what they are yet. Maybe you're thinking about them. Maybe you're thinking, you know, how do I feel less anxiety? How do I feel stronger? How do I learn how to show up for what I want? Think about some of those transitions that are ahead of you this year and make note of them. And as you're doing that, I'm going to share with you for just a moment. I like this. I'm leaning into intention, letting go, being brave, letting light in. I'm going to put on my glasses to read these. Getting focused on my reality and detaching from illusions, focusing on a new market in my business and scaling, moving in a couple of months. Okay, all transitions. We're all here for a reason. We're gathered on this topic for a reason, right? You know, for me, why I'm talking about this today and why I'm so passionate about this topic is I do feel as though I've spent a lot of my life in some state of transition. I've created many evolutions of me and of change. I spoke earlier about losing my father at a young age. That was a major life shift. I also moved a few times while I was in high school. That was a big shift. I moved my family from the Midwest to the West Coast to pursue a career. And then I didn't like that career, so I quit it and left and came back again and left. Not as easy. I have been divorced twice, so 2 marriages I have left. And I have struggled with feelings of darkness, of failure, of brokenness, especially when I feel that my choices have left me outside of the norms of what I'm told I'm supposed to be doing, you know, getting a good job, being a working parent, keeping my family intact, whatever that might be. I really struggled. And I kept thinking, you know, what is wrong with me? Am I broken? Am I the common denominator? Why do I keep seeking and leaving and shifting? And still I land in this place of not understanding why I still don't feel okay. And that innate curiosity on what it is that causes us to want to leave, move on, shift, change, create something new, even when we don't know what that something is, led me to this journey the last year and a half of interviewing women. And I have interviewed in the last 18 months over 50 women, ages 21 to 81, on the topic of transition, of leaving something and moving on, and what their experiences were like. And there were so many stories, so many beautiful stories. Most of the women, I think probably all, didn't just have one story of leaving. They had many. They had many. And they had carried so much of that with them. They left things like countries, India, the UK, Venezuela, Israel, US. They left cities, Miami, Omaha, Seattle, Los Angeles, New York, Minneapolis. They left husbands, sometimes once, twice, three times even. They left abusive relationships, their religion, family members, even children. They left family of origin, Native American reservations, cults. Many left toxic jobs, careers, fantastic jobs at the pinnacle of their career. I mean, the stories were many. They left college. They left because they were seeking something, but they weren't always sure what they wanted. And there are a few observations from talking to them that I would like to share with you before we get into some exercises on your personal transition. First of all, it's okay to want something different, even if you don't know what that is. It's okay. And it's okay to take the time to figure it out. Everything doesn't have to be on a project plan. Everything doesn't have to be on a timeline. And what's really important is during that process, when you're trying to figure out what's next, whatever that might be, and as part of being gentle with yourself during that process, it's important to remember that it is not your responsibility to make others understand what you are doing or why you are doing. We're going to talk about this a little bit more because it's an area where we can easily get caught up in. Can anybody relate to that? And not being able to make the move until it makes logical sense to everyone else. And not being able to tell friends or family what it is that we want or aspire to do because we're worried it won't make sense to them, right? It's really important in this process of thinking about what we might want to be different, to know that it is okay to just feel that way, even if it doesn't make sense to others. I'm not suggesting that you just throw everything out the window without a plan, and we'll talk a little bit about that planning phase. But I do want to suggest that you give yourself the time and space to explore making the change. The second thing I hope to cover today is that it's really common for us to ignore a desire to make change, especially if we know that us making that change is going to impact others. Change is hard. And it's hard when we see the impact on others, especially people we love. Maybe it's our children, our parents, our coworkers, the teams we built, whatever that might be. You know, it's easy to stay where we're comfortable, but we also know that growth requires transformation and that being uncomfortable is often part of that growth. How do we balance that? How do we balance those desires to growth and for change when others are impacted by our choices? It's hard. And I think what's even harder is that once we make a decision to change, we have this innate need to just power through it. We just want to power through it. And we're going to talk a little bit about that today and how sometimes this period of trying to ignore and push down our desire for change shows up in our body. We're going to talk about that a little bit more later. Every single person I interviewed talked about how this period of knowing they needed to change, but resisting that change resulted in something showing up in their body and how that shifted for them after they changed. And the third thing I want us to anchor on today is only you know your truth. Only you know your truth, no one else. But it's hard because we are always seeking that counsel of approvers, right? We want to make sure our decision is the right one, that everybody approves it, that it's going to be the best tweet ever. We need to find a way to let go of that seeking validation and permission from others in order to find and know and trust our own truth, our own voice. I like that somebody wrote finding their own voice, because that's part of this process. It's a big part. Many of the women I interviewed spent a lot of time listening to others, worrying about what others thought, trying to please others, and lost track of what it was that they really wanted in the process. An interesting statistic of the over 50 women I interviewed, and hundreds of leaving stories, hundreds of shifts, not a single one, not one, said, I wish I had stayed. Not one. Many said, I wish I had left sooner. Again, I'm not advocating that leaving is an answer, but what I am advocating is understanding when transition might be calling you. And so we're going to go into some exercises that will help us with that. Before I do that, any questions? Any questions for me? I like this. Explore. It's so important to listen and explore, and to try and quiet the other stuff. The other stuff does get in the way. Growth requires transformation. When change creates challenges for people we love and like. Not just leaving, but acting too. Kristen, I'd love to hear more of what you mean by that. Do you mean that sometimes we're too busy playing this role that everything is perfect, and so it's hard to unwind from that? That's one of the themes that we thought. And Ruth, will you address transition versus escape? Oh, that is a good question. And it's a big one. And I think before we go into the exercises, maybe I'll take a moment to try and just address that from my personal perspective. I do think that sometimes when someone has a lot of back-to-back instances of leaving, not always, but sometimes, it can be because they aren't in sync with their own desires and their own truth. So they keep seeking, the next job, the next boss, the next relationship, wherever it might be, and then they end up in the same place. I know that happened to me on many occasions. And really the person I was running from was me, right? I wasn't being honest with my truth, my integrity. I was busy trying to please others. And I'm not sure if that answers your question, Ruth, but I think part of what these exercises I hope will help us do, and I'm sure you all have exercises you've done that I'd love to hear about, is to get grounded in this, what is it that we really want, and going that layer deeper. Because if somebody asks me, what is it that you want? Oh, I want to be a writer. Okay, but why? Why do you want to be a writer? Because I have something to say. But why do you have something to say? Because I've screwed up and I don't want other people to screw up. But why? Why is that important to you, right? You keep having to go a layer deeper to really understand, is it just on the surface, or is it something that is below the surface? And I think especially when we're intertwined in social media, we get confused with what it is that we want versus what others want, or what we think matters in order to be seen, to be heard, to be valued, to be enough. Another example I'll give is I really wanted to have this talk about transition. I thought it would be meaningful for people who might be struggling with, do I stay or do I go? But there was a part of me that said, oh, you can't have this conversation because you haven't finished your book that you've been working on for 5 years, by the way. And what I realized is that I can still have something to say even if I haven't published the book, that I don't need the book to be credible, that I have life experiences and research and understanding and self-development that I hope helps me have something to offer, to be relatable. I know that my journey isn't perfect. I know that I don't have all the answers. And my hope for today is to inspire you to think what it is that you have inside you. that will help you in your journey to uncover what is really so important to you in this lifetime. Okay, so I'm just going to check on this. By acting, I mean moving forward, making decisions, and taking control. Okay, we'll talk a little bit about that. And Ruth, I'm glad that helped answer your question. And Catherine, I like what you wrote. Escape is often from something that is unsafe and it has a negative connotation, but maybe it shouldn't. I think that's interesting. And there's a whole other topic on connotations that maybe we'll get to, and you guys might have to remind me. We're doing great on time. I'm going to start with the first exercise. And I call this exercise future tripping. I'm not sure if you guys can relate to this, but I have a high need to be in control and to be perfect and for everyone to know all the bases are covered. And a lot of times my desire to be, perfectionist, to make sure everyone knew that I could handle it, I would spend a lot of time future tripping. And for me, future tripping means considering every what if scenario. What if I'm ostracized from my family? What if I'm side railed from my career? What if my children never speak to me? What if, right? The amount of what ifing that I would spend in creating scenarios that may or may never happen. I can't even stand to think about the energy I spent in that. I'm not sure if that's something that happens for you or not. It's also a stage that I refer to as analysis paralysis, right? It's for some crazy reason, we think we have a crystal ball. We think we can figure it all out. And once we figure it all out, then we can make the decision to change. And it came up really frequently in the stories I heard. People didn't want to leave a career during the pandemic because they thought it would be irresponsible. People didn't want to move their children because they thought that would be too much transition for their children. People didn't want to pursue their dream to be run a marketing agency after they had spent time getting a PhD in as a psychotherapist, right? We feel like, hey, we went down this path, we made this bed, so we have to lie in it. Now we cannot change. And the only way we can change is if we've uncovered every possible scenario and we know it's going to be covered. Part of what happens in this process is that we're spending so much time in trying to figure out, will we get it right next time, that we get stuck. And I'm going to tell you something, there is no more just one more time. There's no more just one more time. Unfortunately, we're always learning, evolving, changing. There is no such thing in my book anyway as getting it right. We are imperfect, broken humans. That's what makes us human and interesting and keeps us going. So I want us to take a few minutes to do an exercise where we're talking about the times that we might be future tripping and spending our time thinking about this upcoming transition in worry versus possibility. So for example, if your upcoming transition is, I want to move. I want to move to a different state. Some of the worry statements that you might be future tripping on are things like, what if my children don't make new friends? What if I can't find a job? What if we don't like the community? What if our house doesn't sell, right? So take a minute, look at the transition that you picked for this upcoming year, and write down some examples of where you're future tripping and in a state of worry about what might happen if you make the change. Make note to yourself. If you want to share in the chat, you can. Just take a moment and reflect on the worry statements about your change. Libby, while people are doing that, can I put you on audio for a minute, and can you talk about what future tripping with worry can look like for you sometimes?
Sure. I was just about to put in the chat, but yeah, I'm happy. I could go on forever. This is like, I spend a lot of time in this zone. For a recent one, been a lot in like the what if it's too hard, or how big is it really, and like what are all of the things that could go wrong, and what if it takes too much energy, what if it takes too much away from my family, what if it doesn't go exactly as I planned or exactly as the best case scenario, what if.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I can relate to all those. How about everybody else? Anybody else want to share? You can feel free to take yourself off mute.
I'll share, Monica.
Okay.
For me, it's what if I'm viewed as a failure if I pivot my business, my career, my work, my blank, fill in the blank, all about external messaging for me, which I'm working on this year.
Oh, I love that, Beth. Thank you so much for sharing. Anybody else?
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
One of the things that really trips me up, especially future thinking, is the fear of being trapped in the future decision and not having it be what I envisioned it to be, the outcome not being what I was looking for, and making these changes that could potentially affect so many family members in my circle, and then just that failure.
And may I ask you, thank you for sharing openly. Is it Dee?
Yes.
And what if that happens?
Well, that's the fear. If that happens, how do I face the failure? How do I pick up and go? What would be the next decision? What if, and it's just this constant cycle of trying this, seeing if that works. And if it doesn't work, you try forward. But in the process, as a mother, as a grandmother, as a wife, family member, there's a lot of responsibilities that I have that luxury, as the older I get, is not easy to recover from. Choices that haven't been fulfilled, or the outcome isn't what I wished it would be.
I so appreciate your openness, and I can relate to your words. I can. And what I would like to invite you to consider are two things. One is, what if you fail? You strike me as somebody who has perhaps failed before and found your way through it. Great. Awesome. I think that's awesome, because that means, you're still standing here in community sharing. Look how strong you are, right? I mean, you have found your way through failure before, and you're fast forwarding us to the next exercise, which we'll do in a minute, but you can build confidence. You have failed before. You will fail again, and you will find your way.
Confidence of failing.
Yeah, that's okay. You will find your way. The other thing I'm going to say to you as a mother, and sometimes this is really hard for me, it's like, what if all my work is to pass the baton to the next generation? And if my children and their children have something I didn't, because I did this work. Sometimes the work isn't for my reward. Sometimes you don't get to reap and sow in the same season. But I am willing to step out and move forward and fail forward.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for sharing. Brooke, one of the things you said, and this is the second part of this exercise, and gosh, I'm so touched by, I'm getting emotional here, but is, how do we reframe our worry statements with what if statements grounded in possibility? I shared we're going to talk about transitions with grace and possibility. This is the possibility part. What if we succeed? What if our children thrive? What if I find my dream job? What if I become a leader in the community? What if our house sells above asking price, right? Those could be all what if statements on the other side too, but it's kind of human nature for us to really think about the problems. How do we change it into the possibilities? So what I'd like you to do for the next part of this exercise is look at your worry statements that you wrote down and do a reframe. And if you need some help with that, raise your hand and I would love to talk through some of them with you. All right, as you're thinking about your reframe statements, does anybody want to come off mute to share, or is anyone having challenge with a reframe that they'd like to work through with me?
I can share.
Great.
One of the things that I'm looking at is changing school district. So then the worry is, okay, what if my son doesn't make new friends? But I would be a lot happier. And so it's pointed out to me, don't you think your son would want you to be happier? I mean, that's the whole point, right? He doesn't want me to be unhappy either.
That's
Either
exactly right.
has to make new friends.
So the worry statement is, what if my son doesn't make new friends?
Mhm.
And the reframe statement is,
It's when I'm happier, we'll be able to connect better and have a stronger family.
I love that. That's a beautiful reframe. And children are resilient, which doesn't mean that it's an easy road. Moving is never an easy road,
Mhm.
but children are resilient. And we do have to, especially as parents, it's really hard to balance the choices on what our knowing is and what we want for our children. And I think part of the challenge is we think we can control what's going to happen for our children or how to make the circumstances perfect for our children. And we can't. We have to let them have their own hero's journey, and we have to give them the tools. We have to give them the tools. It's not to say that we shouldn't take into account how our choices affect others in our lives, especially our children. We should. We should absolutely take that into account. But our fear of what will happen to our children shouldn't be the driving force to stay stuck somewhere that we're really deeply unhappy. That's my personal belief. Thank you for sharing, Laura. I appreciate it. Does anybody else want to share a reframe or ask for help with one? Kate, I would love to hear from you. Hi, thank you for
Hi.
joining.
Oh, thank you for doing this. It's wonderful to be here in this community. I am considering leaving my job in academic medicine and leaving medicine entirely. And it feels very frightening to say that. And my big fear, my worry is that I'm going to regret it. People are going to talk badly about me, that it won't work out, and I'll have to try to slink back to medicine and get a job somehow to survive, and sort of bag lady fears and all that great stuff. And the reframe that I came up with is, the big fear is, what if I regret it? And the reframe is like, what if I really love it? And what if my husband's never happier? What if it's absolutely phenomenal and great? And what if I can help people in a different way than I am currently?
There are no words I can say that are better than what you said. I love the reframe. I hope you hold on to it. And I want to ask you a question. How long have you been in your academic career?
If you start it from the time that I ended my academic training, it's been 16 years.
15?
16.
16, okay.
Academic training took 9, so, well, but plus a few here and there.
A long time, right? A long time. It's a big commitment, right? And do you feel that you've excelled and made a difference in that career?
I think I've made a difference in the career. I always struggle to say I've excelled, but I think I probably have.
Okay, you've made a difference. What if there's a new path for you to find and impact the lives of others, and you get to continue making a difference in doing something that you find new, exciting, different, enjoyable, whatever that word might be. You know, what if, right?
Yeah.
I like to draw on, look what you've done in your past. You've made a difference. You were able to master a skill. You learned something, you shared something, you gave something. All of those things will be true in whatever journey you have next. I really believe that. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to go to the chat. I disagree with you on that. Children depend on us to protect them and make sure they are happy. So they should be our top priority when making changes. I absolutely respect your opinion. And I respect that every parent wants to prioritize what is in the best interest of children. And I think safety of children is paramount. So thank you for sharing. My future tripping. Will I have funds? Will I get grants? How do I apply for funding? How will I know families will want to take part in the projects I want to start the year? What if I fail? What if things don't go as I plan? Yeah, all of those things might be true. What if? And then counter, right? What if you do get the grants? What if you do get the funding? What if there are families that take part in your projects and you're able to make a difference? What if things don't go as planned, but maybe they go better? Oh, thank you, Connor. Relatable. That's what my goal is today. Anyone else want to share a reframe or ask for help with the reframe? I really appreciate your comments. Please, please, please keep them coming. All right, what I'm going to say in summary about the reframe, because we have another exercise to do and I want to leave time for questions, is there is no such thing as low hopes. It's one of my favorite sayings. If you want to shift from a place of anxiety to abundance, if you want to start recognizing opportunities that could be in front of you, start with looking for those worry statements that come up in your head and reframe them. Capture the worry statement and write a reframe. It really helps. I know it seems simple, but it really helps. Even something as simple as, and I know I've said it a few times today on the call, I should change to I want, I desire. Just those simple reframes of our worry statements and what ifing scenarios and, you know, analysis paralysis moments and setting a goal to flip the script on that future tripping to reduce your state of worry and anxiety and build more confidence in your ability to manage transition. Okay. The second thing I want to talk to you about is this feeling of worry and responsibility to others. And I'm going to take the situation of a job. Okay. So, you know, before I left my last job, I had received a promotion. I had to go and recruit a new team. I was building a new division, and I was in the midst of this process of this big career, big team, big new division, and a lot of pressure at work. And I was traveling a lot. This was pre-pandemic. And at the same time, we had moved. And my son, who was a sophomore in high school, was struggling. And I was getting ready to get on a plane when my husband looked at me and said, what if you didn't have to miss Owen's sophomore year of high school? Why would you? And I thought, oh, that's so hard. How could I give up this big job? How could I go do something else that didn't require travel, sales and travel and all these things? It's what I know. But on the other side of that was also this, you know, dilemma about how do I want to be present for my son during his high school years, especially knowing that he was going through a transition. And I spent a lot of time thinking about what people at work were going to think of me. I was thinking about how mad the team I had recruited to this new job where I promised to be this great boss, how mad they were going to be about how disappointed my boss was going to be about the others I beat out for the opportunity who had applied for the promotion. And now I was just throwing it all away. And I spent so much time in the heads of everybody in that office trying to decide how they were going to think about me. What happened is I left. I chose to stay home for a while and I left. And it was hard. It was hard to make the decision to leave a career that I had built for almost 30 years and really at a pinnacle of a job that I thought I wanted, and at a place where I felt I could make a difference. And two things that I want to share from that moment is one of the people that I had recruited and had switched jobs to follow me said, you know, for a minute I felt sorry for myself. And then I realized your son needed you more than I did. And I love that. I thought, oh, I'm going to hold on to that one. That's a good one. And the other thing is when I walked out the door, my phone was wiped, my email was wiped, and work never thought about me again. But guess what? My son did. Guess what? My husband did. My family did. Right. So we've got to really think about how much time we're spending in the lives and in the heads of other people. And another saying that I love is, if you're spending the time in someone else's head, you better have permission, right? Because you don't belong there. You don't belong there. What is in your head? What is in your heart? How do you get clear on what your priorities are? So many of the women I interviewed talked about how they weren't sure if they could leave because of what other people would think. Would it make sense? How would it disrupt others' lives? Rather than getting clear on what it is that they wanted, their desire, what was important to them. And I think part of this is also a gift on perspective. If I asked you to think about a change you made 10 years ago, you think about it so much differently now than you did 10 years ago, right? Well, I want you to take a moment and pause and think about the transition you're considering or planning for this year. And I want you to think about perspective. Are the people that you're wondering what they're going to think, are they going to be in your lives 10 years from now? What are you going to be thinking about this decision 10 years from now? What are the possibilities 10 years from now? Is this your legacy work? Is this your interim work? Is this the place you want to live forever? Is it somewhere you want to try? You know, try and get clear on that. Just take a minute to make a few notes about, you know, the people you're thinking about, people that are occupying space in your thought, in your head, that counsel, that censor of, oh, but if I do this, what will they think? Who are those people? And will they matter 5 years from now, 10 years from now? Take a moment. And what are we going to tell ourselves about this moment in time 10 years from now? Who are the people influencing our lives, our decisions? Will they be there 10 years from now? Are we making space for ourselves in that process? Where is our voice? What percentage does it get as we're crowdsourcing these decisions? One of the other dangers is asking other people what they think when we're not decided, because they start, even though it's well-intentioned, projecting their own experiences and their own fears upon us. We can't ask others to live our lives, just like we can't occupy the heads of other people. Tanya, I love your reframe. Beth, I love yours. Wildly successful business. That's great. And Libby, I like reframing the fear of leaving to a fear of opportunity, cost of not exploring. Yeah, what is the cost of not exploring? That's beautiful. Great, beautiful. And this is something you can continue to do after our call today, but I want to encourage you to remember to think about perspective, not just this moment. This is just a moment in time. This is one decision of many. right? Sometimes we make it this job, this house, this community, this whatever is the end all be all. And I'm not to say that it is not important or significant or pivotal, but what I am saying is it's a moment in time. And there will always be perspective on these moments in time. And you have a right to change your mind more than once. You really do. It's okay. It's difficult to separate our worth sometimes from our circumstances, from our job titles. We've come to believe that our careers are part of our DNA, right? Often the first question we're asked is, what do you do? We are often asked to submit bios, resumes. We kind of have this society built around descriptions and what it takes for somebody to be credible. And sometimes when you're in that in-between, Catherine, like maybe you might be about, well, what will I be without all my academic titles and degrees and experience? It's unsettling, it's uncomfortable to try and know who we are and what it will look like. But what I'm encouraging you to do with the exercises here and with our conversation today is to look inward and not just outward, right? Think about what we desire and not just what we should be doing. Maybe letting go of some of the scrolls on social media, knowing that comparison is really a root cause of low self-esteem. And ultimately, the person that knows what's best for you is you. The person who knows what's best for you is you. And you do have your knowing. You might be trying to shove it down. It might be hard. It might be uncomfortable, but you know, and you can find your way there. I caution against giving authority to others who don't have to live our life, whether it be in the workplace or family or community. And to be cognizant of the times when we are soliciting advice and people are projecting their fears and their experiences on us. I think sometimes we put so much pressure on ourselves to be perfect, to be responsible, to please others, that we lose our perspective. The other part of this exercise that I will encourage you to do on your own is you can also do what I call the I am and I can list. And I'll send these in an email follow-up as well. But the I am list could read something like, I am a mother, an earner, a survivor, a provider, a caring and capable adult. I am strong, I am flawed, I am, I am, I am. You can list all the things you are. And then you can list all the things you can do. I can read, write, play, laugh, learn, grow, right? I can, I can, I can. And make your I am and your I can list. And know those are the skills and truths about you that will carry you from one place to the next through that transition, through opening up to possibility. Does anyone want to, I'll look at the chat quickly. Question, why do we let others influence our lives when we don't want our lives to look like theirs? That's such a good question. Somebody said to me once, in terms of even getting into, debates with others, it's like, why cross swords with someone whose life you don't respect or don't want or don't aspire, right? We've got to get really clear. And even if we view it as this is their life, that might not be the truth anyway. There are all ways to project on the outside what is not happening on the inside. I've been guilty of that. I've been projecting the perfect family, the perfect career woman, the perfect whatever it might be, when it hasn't always felt that way. So we shouldn't take what's on the outside and assume it's what's on the inside for us or for others. So thank you for sharing. I'm going to get to one last point and then we'll open it up for any last minute questions and what's next. This is homework I'm going to give you in an email and that you can do on your own. But I think one of the things that also was a very common theme with all the women I interviewed was whatever they were resisting was showing up in their body. It's true what they say, the body keeps the score. And so you might be trying to ignore a desire to change or transition, but it frequently shows up in the body. You know, what might be the feelings that show up in your neck, in your stomach, in your hips, in your chest, right? It's showing up. And a lot of times we just dismiss it. So one of the things that I like to do is keep a journal of what's showing up in my body, because I forget. I think, oh yeah, I had some neck pain. But if I journal it for a week, I think, oh wow, look at all that neck pain, and look at when it came about, right? There can be correlations. So take the time to do some body journaling about what types of pains or discomfort might be showing up in your body, because it's often indicative that maybe something needs to be changed. For each of the individuals I interviewed, something that felt pretty significant for them, like maybe it was digestion issues that they'd been to the doctor for, but they couldn't uncover, whatever that might be, changed, shifted, went away after they acknowledged the change that they needed to go through in their life, after they started walking through that transition. I want to close with talking a little bit about grace, because I think that's important. And when I talk about grace and when I define grace, it's about being gentle with myself, about giving myself grace. It's about being gentle with others, about giving others grace. How do I feel when people that are close to me don't show up in the way that I want them to? Typically, that's not about them. It's about me. Got to look inward. Got to do the work. It's hard. Got to do it. How do I stay intact with my integrity? How do I keep my perspective? How do I identify what my knowing is, my alignment, my spirit? What if this period of transition for me looked like grace? What if it looked like grace? What would that look like? It's okay that I don't have it figured out. It's okay that I might have some hard conversations. It's okay that everyone might not get it. It's okay that I feel sad. It's okay that I feel lost. It's okay that this ending is sitting right next to this beginning and it's hard. It's okay. What if transition looked like grace? What would that look like for you? What would that look like for you? What are you willing to learn? What are you willing to unlearn this year? I'd love to close with asking you to think about a commitment on how you intend to be gentle with yourself through transitions this coming year. I'd love to invite you to share any of those gifts with others, any of your practices, any of your questions. I think we can, and we can always go a few minutes over, but certainly I want to, Natalia, make time for any questions that I didn't answer that were in the chat. Grace equals acceptance. I love that. It's okay not to be okay. I love that. Embracing, it's okay to make mistakes. Yes, Livia, I love what you shared about a thyroid cancer being rooted and using your surgery scar as a reminder to live and speak in my truth. That's so beautiful. To be gentle with yourself. Thinking about 10 years from now, whether I succeed or fail, I will be proud of myself for trying, for taking a risk to listen to my heart. Beautiful, Meredith. Thank you. Tanya, congratulations. It sounds like an amazing experience. I have good reasons to feel the way I do, to not be anxious when things don't go as planned, to know that things will be okay and I've got this. You have experiences that are going to carry you through. Those I can and those I am statements. Those are things that are true about you, regardless of the job, the house, the title, the money. No one is perfect. We learn from our mistakes. We all have trials and tribulations. Life was never meant to be easy. Beautiful. to realize the hard parts are really generative and mean growth is happening. Something I'll look back on someday as important. Yes, growth is happening. That transition from cocoon to butterfly is not an easy one. Growth is happening. Thank you for sharing and giving me an opportunity to learn from you today. Again, I know it's a big topic and there's a lot to cover, and we scratched the surface, but I will send the exercises so you have them for reference. I hope you gained some tips on how to recognize transition, how to recognize your ability to move through transition, how to feel open to possibility versus worry related to transition, and how to give yourself grace, and also how to give others grace in the process. You know, when people show up and ask you why you're doing something that is important to you, you have to sometimes remember it's not about you. It's them being uncomfortable watching you change. Perhaps. Thank you. Thank you everyone for sharing and being vulnerable. Well, of course you have to ask, where can you follow my work? On the website that isn't up yet. What I will tell you, two things. In the follow-up email, I will put my LinkedIn profile. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm also going to include my email. I am going to be starting a couple circles on the topic of transition. They are free and open to all, but they will be small groups under 10. And then certainly if you feel like you want to explore this topic in more detail, feel free to reach out. It's really been beautiful to start off 2022 with you. I love the RevelEleven community. Whatever endings and beginnings, whatever transitions you're going through, I wish you well. Natalia, do you want to put up the screen for what's next with RevelEleven?
Yep.